Assalamu alaikum, people listening and watching. You're tuning into the Let's Walk podcast. I'm your host, Ataur Rahman, and today I'm joined by the godfather of pharmacy YouTube, Kevin Yee. So, Kevin, thanks for joining in. It's been a while since we first met, and yeah.
Yeah, I've been called a lot of things, but never the godfather of YouTube. What a humbling experience. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me, Otto.
So, I mostly like most of my audience consists of pharmacy students, so I'd be sticking to that and also your
Sure.
entrepreneurial journey as well. So, uh, being going through pharmacy school, there's always this questions that a lot of questions pharmacy students have. So I'd be including some of those as well. So, like after graduating through pharmacy school, how did you figure out what kind of career path you should be going in?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, because I don't know how it is over in your part of the world, but most people who do pharmacy out in the States, they're like 25, 26, they're around that age typically. And I think there's like this expectation that you have to have everything figured out, but the reality is not true. I think a lot of times, like especially seeing my friends after, it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of opening like new doors for yourself. Like it doesn't need to be like applying to tons of jobs. It's like, oh, like my friend found herself doing oncology and she never did residency or anything like that. Basically, she just like networked with people, just chopped it up, see what it was like. Maybe they found something interesting and they just dove into it, and the right opportunity just opened up at the right time and they just applied. And I think like the only way to really truly understand if you want to do something is just like doing it, and we see this aspect like in so many other parts of like our world, right? Like for example, dating. You never hear people be like, oh, like maybe if I think about it enough, I'll see if like it's actually for me. The only way you really find out is just go on a freaking date and just try it out. And I think there has to be a lot more exploration that our current education system, at least here, doesn't allow for.
So, all in all, you mean maybe like going out and experiencing different parts of pharmacy, different settings, and then maybe you'll try to figure out what suits your taste buds, and maybe you can take it from there.
I think my main point, just to do the TLDR version, is like you won't have it from the jump. You won't really know if something's for you until you try it. And so just open up opportunities, meet people, and just give things a shot if things open up. And that's how you figure out your career will change over time. And it's important not to fixate over how you think your career is going to be like, because it could change. Things happen. Like look at the disruption of chat GTP and AI and all that. I literally submitted a full article on ChatGTP and I was like, put it in layman's terms, explain this to me like I'm five. Did a really great job. Can calculate number needed to treat, can calculate like all these different things. And I can have it pull like the results from the context that I gave it with relatively decent accuracy. And I can ask, what are a clinical pretend you're a clinical pharmacist. What are the clinical implications of this study? It's really, really interesting. So my point is not to scare you out of pharmacy, but my point is that careers, they evolve over time, and not to be so fixated over just one thing for the rest of for your whole entire life.
With that, do you think like AI is going to displace few of the careers, or how do you think AI is going to uh, change the pharmacy, industry and everything?
Let's take a look at some of the major disruptors in technology over the last like 100 years, right? First, we have the telephone, right? People didn't really have to meet in person. Like, did it end a lot of careers? Probably, because you don't need to like as many
Postman.
salespeople. Yeah. Well, postman. Well, we still have. Yeah, and that's a good point, right? Like, it probably affected like the mail system, right? But we still have mail carrier services still to this day, partially because of like the U.S. government. We subsidize for it and all that. But also, like, I think about like maybe salespeople back in the day where you had to go door knocking and meet up with clients. But now, one salesperson can, with the invention of the phone, it eliminated a lot of those traditional jobs. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit later, computers, right? Back in the day, it was so crazy. In order to process something, you had to, I'm not sure, you're pretty young, but back in the day, like I was even really young for this, but you didn't have anything to swipe. You literally had to like get a the carbon paper and like run the numbers over the card. They had these devices where you just like you put the card down, there's carbon paper on top, and then you like run it over and it copies all the information on the sheet, and you process everything later. But guess what? Those jobs are out of business. But think about how much innovation was created because of the computer. Now suddenly, like we're creating these like, oh, we're creating these systems right now to handle our pharmacy operations, right? And all that. Okay, fast forward even later, the phones, right? Did it disrupt a lot of things? Probably. And we look at things like Uber and stuff like that too. It pretty much decimated the taxi industry, but there's still taxis out there if you look hard enough. Just not as common. It does impact. So let's bring it back to pharmacy. With the invention of AI and all that, I feel like the days of verifying to seeing the right bottle, the right pill goes in the right bottle might be over. I think even just checking for drug interactions too, it's like if there's an algorithm, guess what? You can program it. And if there's AI, it can learn nuance. So I think a lot of those roles will be outsourced to AI if possible, because if you're a business owner and you're able to say, let's say you have 10 pharmacists that are costing you 100K right now. Imagine just having one AI system that you're paying just like 100 grand per year. Why wouldn't you do it? Like as a business owner, I'm not saying it's right. And maybe you hire one or two pharmacists, two live pharmacists, just to oversee anything for the people skills and all that. It lessens the workload for a lot of the pharmacists, and you're not doing all the boring things anymore. So what I'm saying is like the old traditional guard of like the old pharmacy tasks that we used to do will be probably outsourced and like outsourced with AI and these machinery over time. But there's a lot of innovation that comes toward it. Like my friend Brian Fung, he's like really big onto like code healthcare coding and stuff like that as well, right? So there's opportunities in that, and that's really hot. So yeah, you could be like, yeah, doom and gloom AI is going to ruin pharmacy, but there's always a lot of innovation when there's like new technologies that come out. There's new problems that need to be solved. And it's a mistake just going into a field just thinking like, oh, it's going to be like this for the rest of the time. It never is.
Yeah, so I had Brian on the podcast as well. So for people who might be listening, you can tune into that episode as well. So we uh, briefly talked about, if coding is necessary for people who are in pharmacy, because there's always uh, this conversation that, maybe few years in time, pharmacy might be like dead or something, or maybe, coding should be mandatory for everyone who wants to be in pharmacy and that sort of thing. So I think it's good for people who might be, listening, that, they might check out the other episode. So Kevin, backtracking to your career, and uh, what I feel is that maybe students who might pursue a non-traditional career post pharmacy, maybe that's entrepreneurship, maybe that's if let's say they're someone who's into music, they go into music or acting and whatnot. Do you think uh, like their pursuing pharmacy was a waste or something like that? Or like, how do you feel personally as an entrepreneur?
Just from your perspective, let me ask you a question. How do you see it being a waste? Why would it be? Why would it, from your perspective, be a waste?
Eh, Um, the only aspect where I feel is that maybe the amount of time that the person has spent studying and everything, if they could have put that in this the very place where they are passionate uh, in, they'd probably excel a lot more. That is one thing. But on the contrary, the place where it helps is that, even if you, let's say, didn't like it, or you just, just went your way through pharmacy school, you kind of get the habit and the skills to, do the things which you don't like. um yeah, like, just sucking it up, and like, and not just, doing things which you like, that kind of thing. So it's like a little bit of both.
Hmm. You mind if I show you a quick diagram really quick?
Yep.
Cool. So this is, let me just pull this up really quickly. There's this great diagram. Sorry, you can cut this boring part out. There's this great diagram. Just trying to find it really quickly. I don't want to waste too much time, but I'll just summarize it. So a lot of people might say it's a waste because you have to, like, what, you spent all these years in school, and now that what you're doing has nothing related to do with like what you previously did. Would you say that's probably one of the most common arguments?
Yeah, that's one of the most common arguments.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you're looking at that point of view, it's probably very valid, right? Meaning, like, if the end goal is to be in this career of pharmacy in particular, then you're right. But what if we change the meaning of the end goal? What if it was to live up to your human potential? What if it was to find a career that, maximize your human potential, something that you feel very fulfilled about? Then the context kind of changes. Alex Hormozy has a really, like, I met Alex Hormozy, which was really cool. But he has a video called like 55, these next 55 minutes will change the course of your life or something. And it's just him on the stage talking about something. And he has a diagram of like Jay-Z. And like, when you think of Jay-Z, what do you think about when you see Jay-Z?
Music artist, like musician, singer songwriter, probably.
Okay. What else? Anything else?
Maybe like a brand, business.
Yep. He has his own like label and stuff, like Rockefeller Records and stuff like that. He signed on a lot of a lot of artists. Anything else?
No, I mean, like, this is right. Like, he's in the music space, right? And a little bit of business. Like, whoever's in music, they probably have their own brand, their own label, and clothing, probably sneakers or something like that.
Yeah. And so there's this concept of skill acquisition, because like the argument might have been like, hey, Jay-Z, if you want to be a rapper all your life, then shouldn't you just stick to just like writing music? But over time, he learned how to negotiate deals, how to acquire talent, how to build a brand. Sorry, my phone is going off, but how to build a brand. And I think a lot of times, like, we need to look at our own careers as skill acquisition. So what a lot of people don't know is, like, I learned a lot in my pharmacy years. I learned a lot about the soft skills of communication, just the basics of it, right? It was further refined with sales and stuff. So I learned the basics of that. Okay. I learned what professionalism meant. So how to have professional presence. Um, there's a bit of that. Okay. For me, I learned how to, like, the basics of storytelling through my YouTube, because I used to document like my things with YouTube. And then I learned how to do inbound sales, this world of high ticket closing and all that. Right. So I learned how to do that, how to negotiate deals. And then it's like, okay, what was after that? I learned how to make irresistible offers. stuff that Alex Hormozy teaches, and I help other people with it. So I had to learn how to be an educator, a consultant, how to have this professional presence. I learned all the soft skills of communication, of clients, of sales during that time. And now I'm learning the actual business of YouTube. Like, you're catching me in my season of my creator season. So I pretty much am dissolving most of my agency services except for consulting. And I'm just going into like the creator world, how to provide this vision of zero cost education and all that to the masses, how to create masterminds where I can take already successful people, bring them together, and charge for that service of relationships. Okay, so why do I bring this up? Because we have to look at things as skill acquisition, right? And even though not everything is applicable of the clinical aspect of like my pharmacy career is not completely applicable, there's tangential skills that we learn. So for example, if anyone follows my sales methodology, it's all based off of psychology. It's all based off this concept of the survival state and an executive state. So your survival state is your stress response, amygdala kicks up. There's like the adrenaline dump, fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic nervous system kicks up. The other side is executive state, where your prefrontal cortex turns on. You can actually critically think. You can do long-term thinking. You can turn on things like empathy. It's pretty much where you want to be when you're making significant decisions, right? And that's my sales methodology. But if it wasn't for my science background, I couldn't be able to explain what is really happening. Or even if I didn't know 100%, I know the science well enough where I can just relearn it really, really quickly. I think that's how we should look at things. Like, dude, don't look at the job role. Look at like where you want to be, like maximizing your potential, and look at the skill acquisition, the skills that you want to acquire during this experience. So I always tell people, don't even like chase a high, like I think in my old videos, we talked about this maybe, where like I said, don't chase a high paying job, chase a high paying skill, but not even that. That's like a very old version of me. My new version of me says like, hey, don't chase a high value job. Don't chase a high paying job. Don't chase a high value skill. Chase high quality experiences, because with that, you get the skill set and more importantly, the relationships that you can never replace. So that's my spiel on like whether it was a waste or not. But if you're looking at it from a career point of view, you're right. Probably did waste it if I want to be a retail pharmacist, but never wanted to do that to begin with.
That kind of puts into perspective, and it also reminds me of like the game of Mario or something. Like every level you go, you kind of get little like new skills, or or any other game, just like you get some new swords, or you get some new shield and armor. So it's more like as you level up, you get like more and more gear so that you are able to handle and progress, something like that.
Yeah, and that's at some point like the skill stack, like kind of like Diablo, right? Diablo 2 or any of these like skill tree like type of things. At some point, there's an exponential tipping effect where like the combination of the skills really takes effect. And we see this in MMA a lot, where people like they'll start off with boxing, they'll start off with like jujitsu, but then when they learn how to piece it all together, you end up like
with a
a
deadly
GS,
competition.
yeah, like John Jones or GSP, where George St. Pierre, he wasn't like a world now renowned wrestler, but he trained with the best wrestlers, right? And he was a master at putting all these skills together. What's really interesting, have you ever heard of that quote before? I just found this out maybe a few weeks ago, but have you ever heard that quote? Jack of all trades is a master of none.
Yep.
You know that's not
All
the
the
full
time.
quote, right?
No, is it?
I just
I
saw your
think
eyes. Yeah, it's not the full quote. My good buddy George Bryant told me the rest of the quote. Jack of all trades is a master of none, but often better than a master of one. So what does that mean? It means that, specialists, especially with AI, like these specialties are going to just dissolve over time. But it's through these experiences that we learn, the tangential skills that we learn, where we can create really beautiful things. Like I was talking about the MMA analogy where you get really great fighters, and there's this additional skill set of being able to apply different experiences, skill sets, non-related skill sets, and make them relatable to other people. And that's what I do as a content creator. I'm able to bring my pharmacy experience. I'm able to bring my like internet marketing, high ticket sales experience into the arena. I'm able to bring my content, like my YouTube content game, into the arena where no one in the world, like there's probably very few people who are just like me. Right. And this is where, there's a great book called Unfair Advantages. You're the unfair advantage. And it talks about stacking the cards in your deck. My really, really good friend, Hassan, Kuba and stuff like that. Like he talks about it. Really great book. But yeah, like it's all about stacking the deck. And when you look at this like from a long enough time horizon, right? Like you can create something truly beyond just a job. But it's hard. It's not easy. The shit is really, really hard. I've like sacrificed so much to get to where I am today. And I think just right now I'm just starting to see the tipping effect of all these like combined things these days. And something I'm learning these days that I didn't know as a pharmacist was like, how do I build a vision and mission that actually means something to me? So yeah.
Yourself saying, like after so many years, like I'm like quite young compared to like your age. So, like there's always this timeline, as Asians, like, by this time you should have this figured out and everything. And like very few people are very open about, like not sticking to the timeline, like not intentionally or anything like that, but more like, it takes time to figure out. And for different paths, it's going to take different amount of time with the goals you have and everything. So how do you come to terms with it where everyone around you is, maybe probably sticking to the timeline? It kind of gives you the FOMO and everything.
Well, I want to bring up something that you mentioned just now. It's like we're told certain things, like you should have these things figured out by this timeline. Says who? And why do they even matter? Even if it is our parents, right? Dude, they're going to be dead. Like, I hate to say it. My dad's gone, right? And I'm 35. Like, I probably have a good like 20, 30 years with my mom left, but I still have the rest of my life, even after they're gone. So whether they're supportive or not, and those are the parents, those are like our probably like most intimate relationships other than our like partners, spouses, and all that. But they're going to be gone. And who's going to be the one left paying the consequences? Us, for our own decisions. Are they going to show up at our funeral? No, right? Like they can't. They're going to be dead, unfortunately, right? I laugh about it, but it's true. And it's like, really, in the end of all things, none of this is really going to matter, right? Maybe like if you're more spiritual, you believe in an afterlife, maybe you do believe something. But I guess in the physical realm, everything that you own will be gone. So why does it even matter? Even if it's legacy, right, for your next generation, you know, play it forward. If we don't nuke ourselves to death, right, play it forward like 10, 100 generations from now, right, if we're still here. Your genes are so diluted at that point. Does it really matter? Right. So that's why when we look at these things, it's like maybe it's important not to take ourselves too seriously about like what we do and all that. Like I think that's very, very important sometimes. And we oftentimes like make things into a bigger drama than it needs to be.
So how do you define yourself now? Do you define yourself as an entrepreneur, or like you said, you're moving into the content space? So
Good question. I define myself as like, dude, I'm Kevin. I'm a creator. I'm a YouTube creator in particular, but I just do fun stuff. I help people like get paid doing what they love. I help bring big, bold creators. I call it BBC Vision, but like I help bring big, bold creators together, right? Because I believe that more than ever, especially with technology, people feel more alone than ever. And what better way to bring people together with content? I recently posted up with the this podcast. They're from Macau, the LCAS 853 from the LCAS from the 853, and it was about being. They posted a snippet of me talking about me being Toisanese, right? It's a very specific like type of Chinese person, right? And so many people related to it, and they're like, "Oh my god, I've always felt this way, but I just never felt like I could tell anyone." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the beauty of content." And there's like things going on in the comments, and they're just like interacting. It's beautiful. And so my goal is really to make sure that no one dies like friendless, honestly, right?
There's this YouTube video of yours which I keep coming back to, and it's about failure and failing in chemistry. And
Yeah, that's an old one.
and
Yeah,
every year I keep coming back to that video, watching it like 5 to 10 times.
yeah.
And I want to know, like, how, as an entrepreneur, or probably as a creator now, what what was your biggest mistake, failure, and how did you overcome it?
Failure is so subjective, right? Like I've had a lot of hard times, like, but they're all learning. It's fucking cliche, but they're all learning moments, right? But there are things I wish I did sooner, right? Like some of the things I wish I did sooner was like hire a really, really good business coach from the get-go when I was in pharmacy. Learn how to build a team where not everything's relying on me, right? Some other things was like learning how to set a really, really good vision and mission in particular. And two people I really look up to is like Vanessa Lau and Mike Kim. They're some of the best like at defining the vision and stuff. I wish I did that sort of stuff, in the beginning, but I didn't. I had to. I was always a very good executor, really good at delivering things. But that's because school taught me. Like that's how we're conditioned. Like, come on. Like in pharmacy school, how often do you get to collaborate with people? Very rarely. Maybe you get the odd project, but it's not when you take an exam, you're by yourself, right? And it's like it doesn't teach you all these skills. And everything I mentioned is like anti-school. It's anti-worker almost, right? Because it requires you to think critical thinking skills, not just memorizing shit. No one cares, right? Like, sure, it's great if you want to reference something like that, but we have AI, we have Google, we have all these technologies these days. Is it as really important as it was 100 years ago? Probably not. So those are some of the things I wish I did. And you're asking how do I compensate now? It's like I work on these things, like I went to Vanessa's mastermind and surrounded myself. I had the smallest stick in the room and like surrounded myself around bigger people. I I befriended like Mike Kim and I'm joining his mastermind this week and stuff just because I want to learn and think like him. I also take a lot of time by myself and just really assess like what do I really want, right? Like what do I really want? Money aside, like all that, like what would I be doing, right? If I were to die tomorrow, right? And it's like always the creator route. And I'm just like, I want to focus on this. I want to build all my businesses around this because I have the skill sets of marketing, sales, customer support, all these things that I picked up throughout the years, right? And I had to suck, like I had to suck a lot in life to acquire these skills. But once you acquire the skills, they're with you for life until you die, right? And it's like most people are not gonna like I'm telling you this, like more than half the I would say 90% of the 99% of the people on this listening to this podcast would probably never do what I did of like not throwing everything away, but going on a sales floor, doing like inbound sales, taking like 8 to 12 sales calls a day, like sucking ass like every day, and learning the social nuances and then studying on top of that, right? Like, dude, there's like periods that broke my heart where like my ex-girlfriend, she would plan Disney trips and stuff, and I would be taking like I would be wrapping up sales calls like in the parking lot and stuff. People don't want to do that shit. I don't recommend people do that shit, because there's a cost that I paid, right? But I'm not saying it's the same cost that like other people will have to take, but those are some of the moments I really went through that I don't really talk about publicly sometimes.
So you talked about how you compensate now, but at that moment, right, when you do know that you didn't like you came up short, right, and there's this very eminent need. I would say like at that point in time it feels very weird, like not like weird, but in the sense that like it sucks really bad, and then how do you get over that phase? And I feel that is where like after failing, or do you see it in a very different way that you feel like, oh, fine, I mess it up, let's move on, that kind of thing?
I think a lot of it is like not deluding ourselves. Like, because there's this really great book I'm reading right now. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked.
Ah,
You know what I'm talking about?
I have it over here.
Yeah, I have the old OG one, so like it looks a little different. But it's a very controversial from what you think about like normal psychology be like, because if you've ever been in therapy, it talks about like, oh, you're the way that it's like a lot of it's good for certain things like noticing your emotions, labeling your emotions, like noticing how you talk to yourself, but doesn't really solve the root core of the problem. And what we don't realize is like what happened happened. That's subjective, like truth. That like whatever happened happened, right? Like I went to pharmacy school, I got a six-figure job and all that, right? But what we don't realize is like oftentimes, and Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, all these other authors will probably agree, where it's like a lot of our suffering comes, a lot of the moments when we're suffering and the moments of joy come from the meaning that we put to the experience. So what do I mean by that? I'm trapped in pharmacy. I hate this. Like this, I feel stuck in pharmacy. I like this is a horrible, like I fucking hate counting pills all day or doing whatever or dealing with shitty people. But that's the meaning I'm putting to that experience. Instead, if I was like, okay, you know, obviously I don't really like this, but what's a new meaning? What's a new belief that I want to adopt? Right? It's like, oh, this is the cost of skill acquisition. It's not forever, right? And like I might not enjoy it, but there's an exit plan. This is what I want to do, right? And it's taking this mentality of redefining everything too. Like I'll give a better example. So some beliefs that have been on the top of my mind recently is if I don't work hard, then I don't deserve money, right? And at first it's seemingly like sound advice when you're a W2 or like when you're an employee and you're working as a pharmacist and you want to work harder and stuff as a worker, right? But then when you start venturing out into your own thing, other people are not going to value you. You have to value yourself and charge rates. And if you believe that every that you have to work hard every single time to make money, guess what? You're going to be structuring these deals for yourself that are not stacked in your favor, that will burn you out, but most importantly build resentment toward yourself, because you're like, oh fuck, why did I do this? I must hate business then, right? You go down that rabbit hole. So what if we were to change the terms? Like, you know, if I like, for example, one of the things that I'm wrestling with is like, okay, if one of the thoughts I have is like, I only charge a lot if I can provide, if I can charge, like I can charge premium prices if I provide an insane amount of leverage, right? A insane amount of value, quote unquote. Value is very subjective, by the way. So what does that mean? It means that I don't need to do all the work anymore. I need to solve the problem, and I need to figure out a way where like I can put on a team, or maybe I can reuse some assets that I used in the past to help this client out, right? Where I'm not like structuring every deal that is like painstakingly shitty for me. The other example too is like I think about my ex, for example. Like I talk a lot about my relationships. One of the beliefs that I had, like every single breakup I've had, I've been devastated. It's like unnatural almost. And one day I sat with it, I was like, what's going on? And I realized I was holding on to belief that if I don't feel bad about the breakup, it means that I didn't care about the relationship and I was a shitty boyfriend. And I asked myself, like, okay, this is causing all this pain. Is this something I still want to believe in? Right? That I continuously want to hold. And I was like, no, I don't. And all of a sudden, all this like pressure and all that sort of stuff just disappeared one day, you know? And so I think we have to remember that we have a choice to hold on to beliefs that we have a choice to hold on or let go of the beliefs that no longer serve us. But we don't because we're too fucking busy all the time. That like half the time, like when you're young, you're going out all the time, you're drinking, you're like trying to chase girls, you're trying to work all the time. But we never take the time to really discover like what we want or what matters to us.
Yeah. You have been quite, raw on your YouTube videos. Do you ever think that, I'm asking this as a like someone who's making recording podcasts and everything, like how raw or how honest can one be on YouTube? Because sometimes people can take these things and come back at you. Not that like it's going to happen, but like do you fear or do you think about it, like with the rise in AI and everything, like deep fakes and whatnot, like people saying something and being cancelled and this and that?
I don't give a fuck. I mean, there's a such thing as oversharing, but I think when I was younger, I probably used to overshare quite a bit if I look back on it. But these days I share with intention. So the only reasons why I bring up like my ex or like my ex or like the business like setbacks that I've faced, right, is because I believe it'll help someone, right? That relatability, the connections. My good friend always says, George Bryant, he always says like relationships beat algorithms. And that's when I realized like my vision, my mission of everything is like, one of my things is like bringing like creators together, right? And but how do we build that friendship? It's like through vulnerability, through storytelling, through talking about stuff that isn't always fun sometimes having really funny moments too. Like I've been on some podcasts and they've been like really funny because it's like I'm sharing like stories of my childhood and like being stuck on a Hong Kong mini bus or like going to a Chinese fortune teller asking if my dad will be okay, but he dies 9 days later and stuff, right? Like things like that, right? But it's like I'm just trying to make friends on the internet. If people want to take me out of context or anything like that, dude, we weren't meant to be friends, or it doesn't really matter. That's fine, because I think the people I get along with, especially as I'm like growing as an entrepreneur, I realize that the people I really get along with, they're able to hold space or ask questions. They understand there's always more nuance and context behind something going on, right? So yeah, like I don't want to hang out with people who just like instantly can't hear an opposing position. I think it's important. Like I think it's more important than ever. I think it's important to hear opposing views, like on YouTube. You know how many pharmacy people were like, "Oh my God, Kevin, like I can't believe you're talking bad about pharmacy after all these years and stuff." I'm like, these conversations, whether you choose to hear them or not, they're happening behind the scenes. Everybody's talking about how much they hate their jobs and stuff. So why don't we just cut through all the bullshit for a second and just talk about the real shit that's happening behind the scenes. And then I also get the comments like, oh my God, Kevin, like, thank you for saving me from pharmacy, or thank you for bringing up all those points in pharmacy. I decided it was still right for me and I continued on. The truth is, like, I'm not telling you, like, the truth is, like, I'm not telling people do anything, right? Like, it's your decision. Like what I said, like, we have to take responsibility for our decisions. And like, I'm just spreading my truth, what I experience, but I always leave it up to the other person. The only way I look at myself is like a trusted advisor, right? I'll tell you like what I've experienced, but it's ultimately you to decide what you want to do. And even if I told you what to do, and I was like your mom or dad, and it doesn't go right, you would hold resentment toward me. And that's not something I want either. Because we all have there's like 3 needs when we're making a decision. It's like, one, to be consistent with our decisions, right? None of us want to be hypocrites. One of them is autonomy, the need to make our own decisions. And the third one is need to be understood, to be listened to and stuff. I think those things are all very, very important when we're making our own decisions too. Notice like everything I'm talking about, right? It's like something I do for myself. And it's also a service that I do for other people, whether it's through sales calls, being a good friend, all this sort of stuff. I never tell people what to do. I don't think it's right. I think it's up to everyone to make their own decisions.
Nice. How do you feel being the godfather of pharmacy YouTube?
What makes me the godfather of pharmacy?
I think you've been one of the like oldest pharmacy YouTubers. I mean, like the early adopters. I mean, like there have been few, but then like uh, you're the pharmacy, like one of the old pharmacy YouTubers. I wouldn't say old, but like one of the earlier pharmacy YouTubers that have been, coming back to time and time again. So I guess and you say what you think, and there's no sort of filter where you kind of sugarcoat and give people diabetes. So that's what makes you the godfather.
Oh, very humbling. Thank you for calling me godfather. Yeah, I'm definitely not the first YouTuber. Actually, it's my friend Paul Tran. He was talking about pharmacy back in the day. But that's the difference between me and all the other pharmacy YouTubers. Like, I'll always tell you what's on my mind. I'll always tell you what's going, like, how I really feel about things. None of them have like a strong personal like brand, like where, how do I put this? It's kind of like your crazy best friend, right? Online. And that's how I would put it. Like, he's like, for me, when I think about my not persona, because it is really me. It's just a more polarized version of me. But I challenge a lot of things. I don't like to think conventionally, right? Like, blows my mind. Like, back when I was in corporate, they'd be like, oh my God, you have the highest numbers in the district. How are you doing it? Right? It's because, one, I work very hard, but two, I think unconventionally all the time. So while other people are asking for, oh, do you want your flu shot? Like, dude, I'm thinking about what's a better leverageable, like, I didn't even know I was doing it, but what's a better way to approach this that better leverages like my time, right? Whereas like, I'm at the pharmacy, I'm doing one-on-one. Like, if I ask, hey, like, we're doing flu shots, are you open to getting one? Right? Like, versus that's a one-on-one interaction. Versus like, hey, I'm gonna go to this like organization and just be like, hey, we're offering flu shots and some other like vaccinations too. No pressure to get them, but I can set up a stand. We can process all the insurances for you and all that. And now that 1 hour turns into 100 different immunizations, right? And it's like, they're like, how the fuck do you do that? And it's like, well, that's just the way I think. That's the way I am. I build relationships very well. I know I get in the door, just because I'm very authentic and stuff. And for some reason, when like corporate pharmacy, they're like, when it's like, but for some reason, they don't like the disruptors of the industry at all. like myself. They like throw stones at me and shit. And I'm like, okay, now you no longer need me. And now you want to terminate me. Fuck you guys. Right. And that's the only time when I don't do pharmacy. Because I felt so strongly about that you can just be, it's just like any other arrangement, right? It's like they use you and then they discard you when they no longer need you, or they do something that you don't really like, even though I was one of the top producers. So fuck them.
Do you have any habit that you do every single day, which is like a non-negotiable that has attributed to your success?
There's too many, dude. Like I have a whole list of like certain things. Um, I think like as much as I want to spew off everything, I'll answer your question too, but as much as I want to spew off everything, I think it's really finding the things that align with you. And one of my favorite podcasts is by George Bryant. He has his lighthouse quadrants. So it talks about like certain things like what do you do daily like that nourishes you. And he has like mind, body, business, and health. Oh, he has different quadrants, right? I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they're all very, very important. The one superpower that has been influential in my life is jujitsu. It teaches you so much about, it's more than just like, people will go to gym, they'll lift weights and stuff. That's cool and all. But like jujitsu is like, it teaches you a lot about the mind. It's really great for the body. Helps you stay limber and stuff too, like flexibility, mobility. Helps you to be like dangerous, but also helps you to be very kind, because you're not going to kill every single new beginner that walks through the door, right? It teaches you how to be a better teacher. It teaches you things like the art of human nature, where you can deceive people. For me, when I go against a new white belt, I bait them sometimes. I'll take a bad position on purpose, and I'll pretend I'm struggling. I'm like, oh, like I'll make one of those grunting sounds, and they're like, they think they're winning, and then they push back harder, and I flip them over. I like turn the tables on them, and I'm like, that's human nature. It's like you think you give someone a little bit of something, they underestimate you, and then you punish them for it. They got too greedy, right? And you take advantage of it. It's very interesting. It's interesting how you remember how I was talking about survival state, executive state? I can put, like in combat, we're putting people in survival state all the time. I want them to be very narrow-minded. I want them to make a mistake and be fixated. That's my only escape. But in my head, since I have a superior position, I'm not being crushed by all the weight. I'm setting up a trap for them. I want them to go that way. I'm going to take advantage of it and submit them that way. So there's just so many lessons about jujitsu. Like it helps you in all arenas in life, and I would highly suggest anybody just try it.
Is there any popular advice you disagree with?
Pretty much almost everything out there. Which field in particular are you most curious about?
Um, since we both are into pharmacy, let's say pharmacy, and also into a little bit into entrepreneurship. So let's say pharmacy and entrepreneurship and content creation as well.
Oh, for pharmacy, I'm just trying to think, because there's so many things that I've been told in pharmacy. It's either this one: pharmacists are the most trusted profession, which I think is total bullshit, or the other thing where pharmacy is a stable career. I think there's always the illusion of stability with any job, right? Like, for example, they shut down all the Walgreens in like freaking San Francisco because all the robberies and stuff like that, right? There's all these things that there's like contracts. If they don't go through, guess what? They're going to let go of people and stuff too. So I think there's like always the threat of like But and then in your head you're like, oh, but they're a big business, but like any big business can only absorb so many mistakes or can bleed out so long, right? And if there's a disruptor like AI, right, like we'll see if it actually affects it, then I think there's an illusion with that. And we saw this, I think it's up. Let me check the in the US, we have something called the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Um, I think when I checked it like a few years ago, it was like -8 or something. This year, I'm looking at it right now, it's 2% in 10 years. That's the job growth, which is slower than average. So for the people that are like, oh, pharmacy is really booming, that's not what the statistics say. Well, I'm looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is not counting like they talk about like the different work environments and all that. Doesn't include non-farm because like what do you define as non-farm, right? Careers. It's like anything non-farm. If I go in tech, is that considered non-farm? Because technically it's not pharmacy, right? It's like things like that. And also like with the whole pharmacist being the most trusted profession, I think our industry really killed that too, where it's like we don't have the time for a lot of our patients these days. There's not enough space, right, in the schedule, in the pharmacist schedule to build trust. Because relationships, I mean, I don't understand. Like, I get it, right, because they're trying to maximize their dollars and stuff like that for a lot of pharmacists. But think about any friendship, right? It's never like, hey, I'll tell what's going on. I only have like 3 minutes to meet up and stuff. How do you build a relationship with that? So I think with the growing responsibilities as a pharmacist, it's harder than ever, unless you're in a career that has a lot of space. That's why independents are probably a little bit more lenient than like corporate pharmacies. And then there's this whole drug mistrust with the government these days with the vaccines and all that too, because there's always like financial incentives. So I don't know. I think those two things are like the biggest bullshit in our community. I'll talk about content. Like I think the fact that you have to post every day is bullshit. I think that the fact that that frequency matters is bullshit. It's creating content that really resonates with people. I did that shit, like I can honestly say that I used to post every single day. I used to do daily vlogs and all that. But I look back at those times of like the 2018 era and all that, and it's like, dude, I'm not happy about half the shit I posted. I don't care. I had this realization last year where I was like, if I were to die tomorrow, would I care about any of these videos on here? No, I wouldn't. So why don't we just start creating content I really care about that like I feel like needs to be on the internet that's actually really going to help people. And that's when I dropped my like free course last week where like people, it's crazy, people have been applying for my services on the back end. I haven't been actively promoting them or anything like that, right? People are coming to me because of that, right? That's how I know it's valuable, right? In the comments, like the DMs and stuff. And about entrepreneurship, I don't know, there's just so much like bullshit about like the entrepreneur world and stuff. All I have to say is like if someone's promising you that one thing that you don't know and it's probably education, it's probably not. And they're just trying to turn on your survival, like they're trying to activate your survival state so that you just like, oh, this is the one solution, I need it, it's life or death. It's probably not. So I would say like that's like I'm trying to think of something in the entrepreneur space that is kind of like bullshit, but there's just so many bullshit things out there, honestly, right?
Yeah. So did you watch the series The Pharmacist?
No, what is it?
It's about the opium. Like Danny Schneider, he is a pharmacist, and his son gets into an accident, which he considers to be a murder because he believes his son isn't the kind of person to use drugs and everything. And then he figures out that there's a certain uh, uh, doctor or something, and they are prescribing opium to their patients. And as a pharmacist, and this happened, I think, maybe in the early 2000s or something. But so this is like a documentary series about the opium thingy, and then how they eventually sued Purdue Pharma. And it's an interesting series. And also, like, the murder and thingy, that thing is involved, but at the same time, as to the like Purdue Pharma, they didn't take any responsibility other than stopping like the opium trade, and then starting like an de-addiction kind of thing. Like, that's the
Yeah.
only thing they do, right?
There's a lot of shady ass shit that goes down in pharmacy, and it's like when we follow the money, it's pretty shady. Like I think how they rolled out a lot of the vaccines, like I get it, it was an expedited amount of time, but it's like we look at all this shit and it's like those weren't scientific decisions that we're making. Those were all emotional, right? Those safety studies weren't out. We never had time to question anything, but we're encouraging everybody to get it. And we find out that half the shit isn't effective. Like, what the fuck? That's crazy, you know? And it's this like sellout mentality of mistrust throughout time, which is like really damaging our the trust with like the patient pharmacist relationship, right? I really do believe like a few years ago, like it was not even a few years ago, but maybe like 20 years ago, it was probably one of the most like trusted professions. But over time, it just like there's this degradation. But as you're telling me that story, I was like, oh, does he go into like fucking hitman mode where he murders all the doctors and stuff like that? That would have been a pretty good revenge plot. To like, I
But he
killed myself.
actually goes and records all the people he talks to, all the constables, and all the police people, and then he actually tapes them, so without them knowing. So he has evidence of them telling, don't try to open the case again, and then otherwise we'll make sure that you are done for good, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, and
Is
people
this
don't
true?
yeah, like there's a documentary on that Netflix series. So
Oh,
yeah.
not
So,
surprised.
and what's more surprising is that it's on a mainstream platform, that too against a big pharmaceutical company. And that's fascinating, because usually they don't want this in public, right?
Mhm. People are getting smarter, dude. People are getting smarter. That's why like it's scary about things like censorship on like YouTube, censorship on like misinformation and stuff. And I'm not like a conspiracy theorist or like crazy like things, but I do believe in like free speech, and I am very like libertarian-esque, right? Where I believe like, like when we start censoring what people say, because like I come from the generation like my family actually escaped China during the Cultural Revolution, and people are like, it's funny, I see people these days, they're like, oh my god, what like you're oppressing my people. I was like, you want to go to a real oppressing place? Like, dude, back in the day, dude, if you talk bad about the government, they pull you aside and they execute you behind the scenes. Happens. It's really crazy. I'm not saying China's doing that right now, but I'm just saying that it's probably highly likely, like it's like things like that are like really that's true oppression, that's true silencing. And then when you're just like, oh, that's bad, that's good. Well, who's the person that decides what is good or bad, right? Out there, because it's all subjective, right? And then like, yeah, I think it's important to have like free speech and stuff. And so I'm glad this stuff is coming out because people aren't stupid. Like, especially with the internet, like we're beginning to really understand, like, we're able to look up things that we probably wouldn't have known like years past. But also, like, it brings up a really great point is like what you're feeding into chat GTP. How do you know if that's accurate at all? And if people start thinking like, oh, this is like the new Google, like, I mean, like with Google, they censor a lot of stuff. Like we all know in the China, like in China and stuff, like they censor a lot of the searches and stuff like that, right? Like they have the Great Firewall. And I think like as this new technology is coming out, it's like we always have to be quite skeptical, and just not skeptical, but we have to ask like really profound questions about like where we're getting our information from. But I'm glad that shit is going out right now.
Yeah.
It was a really crazy time. I was a pharmacist during that time, 2013 era, where like you get these scripts like from these pain centers for like 300 300 like 320 like fucking pills of Norcos and stuff like that, of opioids, and it was like crazy. Fentanyl was like flying off the shelf. Like it was ridiculous. So yeah.
I think, the like just because we can't measure pain, like as probably like there isn't a thermometer or something like some sort of meter to measure pain or what the patient is feeling, that like we can't just take that as an excuse to just prescribe all the kinds of opioids or whatever we have just to suppress that or something.
It's
And
tough. Yeah, because the empathetic side of me is like we need to help their problems, but also the like if we're to base like the science off of everything, like how do you objectively measure pain? Are you going to use the Wong Baker faces with you know what the Wong Baker faces are? It's with the smiley faces and shit, and be like, yeah, I'm in that much pain. It's not objective, right? It's all subjective. That's the hard part about treating pain. And then all these substances are highly addictive too. And we're starting to see like crazy shit where like, like a bunch of my friends, some of them do like illicit drugs, but they're dying too because like, guess what? That wasn't cocaine that you're snorting. There was cocaine laced with fentanyl, and they're going through respiratory depression and stuff. And it's like, shit, it's really, really crazy. That's why I look at the bigger like the bigger thing is like if you respect your body, you respect your mind, you have like women call it self-love, but I never really resonate with that. It's like self-respect for yourself. If you honor your body, honor your brain, you want to do great things, you can't be like subjecting yourself to these degenerate behaviors, right? It's something I feel very strongly about. That's why I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm trying to quit like fapping and stuff like that. I'm trying to like at the highest levels, like just really try to treat my body with the respect it deserves.
And like the thing about physicians like prescribing drugs and everything. The other day I was at the doctor's with my sister. So she was kind of, getting some tremors and everything. And I was like, this is anxiety, you're just like freaking out because of your exams and everything. She's trying to be an architect. So, and the doctor just, he's like, okay, you got the tremors over here. Fine, I'll prescribe you this. Acha, you have, okay, you have that symptom as well. No problem. I'll give you this. And I'm looking at the doctor. I'm looking at my sister. I'm like, how many more pills do you want? Like, and I'm just like, just relax. And once this exam is over and everything, the results are out, you probably be okay. You don't need to be on some like a drug treatment protocol or something. There might be an issue, but like after the investigations have been done, we didn't find anything, right? So we know like due to lifestyle and everything, some of these things can manifest into probably tremors and everything, anxiety and whatnot. But it was really crazy to see the doctor just going on, without actually like assessing that, I think, you should probably look at your lifestyle and whatnot. So,
Yeah, because lifestyle doesn't pay the pharma companies or anything like that. Or here's the thing, it's a quick fix, right? Because we never like really stop and question like, could our beliefs make us sick? For example, if we're having these beliefs like I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure if I don't pass this exam, right? Consistently, right? Imagine what that does to us. Okay, triggers our survival state, our amygdala is kicking up. We get the adrenaline, we get the adrenaline dump all of a sudden. We can't sleep, increased cortisol, right? We're falling a fucking sleep sometimes, but wired at night because like our blood sugar is out of whack and stuff like that. we never stop and think like, could our beliefs actually make us sick? And why, like, when we look at every single study, is there's that, it's not always big, right? But there's that like 2 to 3% or point like whatever percent the placebo that is getting sugar pills, but why are they seeing any effect? Because that technically should not happen. It's because, like, I mean, even if it was true, right, that's like zero out of like patients don't have to pay anything for it other than time, right, to resolve these type of things, right? But it's not a quick fix, and that's why no one wants to do it, and people are so short-term focused, right, fixated on the short term. But even if it was true, like, there's no side effects from it, from just changing our beliefs. There's no, like, I think every single regimen should start off with, like, I'm not saying talk therapy is like the way to go, but I think there's something deeper that we need to analyze, more than just like giving people like drugs, right? Especially for more long-term things, like, shit, if I got like if I was having allergic, if I took some ibuprofen because I'm allergic to all NSAIDs. If I took some ibuprofen, I'd probably be dying. Of course, give me the EpiPen and shit and do all that. But I'm talking more about like long-term type of things. We never stop and think like, oh, maybe like there's a better way to do this without pharmacological like intervention, you know?
Yeah. It's almost 1 hour now. So I mean, like as we are approaching the end, we have the perspective questions to bring
Sure.
some more perspective into our lives. So it's actually, just like random questions, not.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Ooh, dinner with 3 dead people.
Dead, it could be dead or alive. Like,
Oh, dead or alive?
yeah.
This is hard. I never thought about this. I think one of the people that's really interesting. I don't know why this popped up in my mind. I'm not sure if this is the final list, but I'll just name the 3 people that come to mind right now. I think King Leonidas, Battle of Thermopylae. Do you know that story?
No,
Have you ever seen the movie 300?
no, I have to. It's like what happens?
So basically, Battle of Thermopylae, the Persians are like decimating the Greeks and stuff like that, right? And then they go to Sparta, and then King Leonidas is like, "Fuck you, this is our land and stuff," and they do the standoff at the Battle of Thermopylae. And I forgot the area where it's called, but there's like this area, and they have like, it wasn't exactly 300 people, but there was like 300 and some other Greeks, but the Spartans were like tough as shit, and they just stood their ground, and all of them died, but it allowed enough time for the other Greek forces to like amass a force and launch a counterattack and all that. And I feel like that level of bravery is just like, is so cool. Like, we don't see that today. We don't see that level of like badassness and all that. So I think like that's the first person that came to mind. Another cool person I think about is like um maybe Joe Dispenza. Think he's really really interesting in his like mental models, and it's bled into my entrepreneurship methodology, content creation, and all that. Like, I think that's one. Actually, maybe not Joe Dispenza. Actually, maybe my good friend Eugene Choi. Like, he's been my biggest supporter. He's obviously still alive, but I always have some really keen insights. He's been my major supporter all this time. He's also a pharmacist, went into the whole neuroscience coaching and stuff too. We actually had the same, we applied for the same job. He got it, I didn't. I was really pissed at him. But yeah, there's a bit of that. And I guess these days, I don't know. I can't think of a third person. There's so many like wise people throughout the years. You know what? This guy's dead, but Charles Poliquin. I listen to his podcast, like his old things, like all the time. He's not like an old figure back in the day. But what's really interesting is like he was so ahead of the science at the time about sports nutrition. This guy, he trains like Olympic athletes, wrestlers, MMA fighters, all that sort of stuff, like highest of the highest. He just passed away maybe like a few years ago. But he's such a smart guy and like one of the people I respect. Because he his belief system, like not only the science stuff, but more his belief system. I think all these people have taught me how to be like a better man, more almost like a compassionate masculinity. Like there's this book that comes to mind, The Compassionate Samurai, and I think about that, and I think we need that these days, the ability to like listen to like to our like to be able to balance the nurturing of the feminine energy and to be able to lead through the masculine energy to create, to pave new ways. So I think that's why I chose that list. But yeah, man, like I don't like I'll probably regret my decisions later and be like, oh fuck, I should have met with like Benjamin Franklin or something like that. I don't know. But that's what comes to mind.
Uh, Usually people, have like two people they agree with, and one person, usually it's like either it's Donald Trump or something, or either it's Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of people would say Elon and stuff and all that, but yeah, I'm like more curious about like the character development of people, right? So yeah.
So if you were to go 10 years back in time, what would you say to the younger Kevin?
10 years back in time, what would I say to younger Kevin? So just to give some context, 10 years ago, I was like 25. So I was just getting out of pharmacy school. And wouldn't be like, oh, you should do this or anything like that. Like that's no, because everything that was meant to happen happened, right? I would just say like just like a good brother or a good like fatherly figure, like, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Even if it doesn't, we're all gonna be dead at the end of the day, you know. So just enjoy the journey, relax a little bit, you know. But you're headed to where you're meant to head. That's why I would have told my younger self.
So where's the best place to find Kevin Yee?
Oh, me?
Yep.
Uh I have my whole like for social media and stuff, I have like all my links on refugeehustle.com/links. But I'm on Instagram if you want to DM me. And then I'm always producing like new content on YouTube. My goal is like really with zero cost education on business and creator life. I like to think about it as like business advice, business and life advice from your best friend. So that's how I put it.
So guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, listening and watching, I hope you guys enjoyed it from the Godfather himself, and took something out of it. If you did, let us know down in the comments. And until then, you guys know what to do. Stay blessed, keep taking action. We will catch you in the next one.